My screen. We're recording? Okay, looks like we're recording. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Social Club at the End of This World. Great to see everybody. We've been chatting it up a little bit, and Anne made such a good point. I'd like to invite you to repeat it for the recording if you'd like, Anne, and then we can do introductions a little later. Take it away, Anne, if now is good for you.
Okay, so I had jumped on a few minutes late, so I missed part of the beginning chat, but as the conversation went on about the fact that there are so many people who are manipulating people's belief systems, using our vulnerability to stick with our beliefs no matter what, and using those beliefs to keep us behaving in a manner that flies in the face of all of the scientific fact and causes all kinds of distress. And what happens with me then is that I lose respect for the human race. And I have a great deal of difficulty holding on to loving kindness and generosity of spirit and trust in humanity. And I'm wondering about everyone else on this call and whether they struggle with those issues as well.
If I could respond.
I just want to make a comment. Benjamin, would you be good enough to manage the queue and kind of let people know whose turn it is? Because I can't see the chat window. Back to Dan and then Melissa. And Dan, you're muted. There you go.
Yeah, so just responding. And I have that problem also. At certain times, it becomes very, very difficult to respect, the human species. And I have to go through some real mental gymnastics to understand it in a way that allows me to remain hopeful about humanity. And one of the things that I deeply appreciate that, we are a species, whether you want to attribute it to a God or something of that nature, or just, Darwinian evolution. I do understand that. But we are, kind of a species, the famous biologist from Harvard, Edward O. Wilson, who did the sociobiology book and others since then, he emphasizes that, and the thing about being eusocial as a species, which essentially means that, like ants or termites or other species who have to cooperate in order to survive, you have to have some sort of a hierarchy and some sort of a way of behaving that leads to cooperation. And some of the religions, these organized religions, which are very problematic, I think, they do provide that to human beings. It kind of organizes things and says what's good, what's bad. It creates a hierarchy, like in India, for example, with the Hinduism, you just have the caste system. It's very blatant. You're born into it. But you're always having these struggles between people concerning how is the hierarchy going to be. We could have a capitalist system or we could have a communist system. But it's always about, the hierarchy and the status and who gets what, and always trying to get people either by force or by altruistic impulses to cooperate. And at this point in time, I just say, people were born into their religions or their ideologies. And in order to be able to let it go, you have to be able to understand what you're like as a human being. You have to recognize your nature, essentially, and then be willing to shed some of the beliefs that kind of spin off of being a human being. And it's possible for people to do it. And at this point in time, my belief, I guess, is that short of humanity quickly evolving beyond the hardwired tribalism, unthinking kind of tribalism, it's going to be a real roadblock to doing anything, on a scientific level with trying to save the planet. And I think it's sometimes just, we just accept it as, yeah, that's how things are. That's the way people are. But again, Ann, I do, I have these kinds of, these thoughts, that I pass through my mind, reminding myself that, human beings are capable of being very, very different in terms of, how they believe morality is, etc. But it could change, and I really do believe it needs to change. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and mute out.
So can I enter in?
That's right.
Yeah, because I'm only going to have a moment, but I couldn't pass all that by in silence because it's kind of my field of focus, I guess you could say. But so I have a solution for the fossilized, rigidified, unmovable stance of most human beings' belief systems that have been practiced for centuries and ingrained so far in their nervous systems. For most people, I agree, there is really no hope for anything to change. And just to even address the whole Trump distraction, well, let him distract. That's good. Let him take the attention of everybody else while we get busy and focus on what we need to focus on, which is waking the F up as a collective and starting to create a new kind of, consciousness field that comes at this from a different angle. I don't care what anybody else has done in the past. Obviously hasn't worked. It's created disaster out of this planet. So I have a thing called Vegan Synergy Meditation, which I'm doing now in the Vegan World 2026, and also spontaneously whenever Jamin says, "Hey, Dharmendra," and knocks on my door and says, "Can we do this now?" I go, "Yeah, fuck yeah, we can do this anytime." But anyway, it's going to actually become a thing we're going to start doing. We're going to start working at the subconscious, conscious, and super consciousness levels with people to start to come together and open up all the levels of what's going on as a collective and increase our consciousness exponentially, and then start to open up some of these insurmountable problems that we have. And I've been doing it for 26 years. I'm not just talking about something I read. It's something I awakened to and is a natural experience and skill for me that I can do. And I've done it with people, hundreds of people over the last 26 years. And I've already been doing it. I've already started with Benjamin, with Suzanne, with Nolan, with Dolly, with that beautiful Indian guy whose name I can't remember, Shankar, I think it is. With Ray. Ray loves it. He's got me going in there already through the Vegan Collective Intelligence stuff, where I'm going to start introducing the Vegan Synergy Meditation. So I agree with everything Danielle says. I don't have any hope for the general mass of humanity. I don't know how we're going to get the whole scientific thing to fly. But I think it's more important that we create something and come from a brand new place that's much more powerful, much more grounded, much more conscious, much more real than anything that's hit this planet so far on a collective level, because we can. I've seen it already in practice. People are ready for it. People, whether they've had any training or not, people are just ready for that and are ready to start to bring that into the world. And from there,
I want in on the synergy meditation. I want in.
You are in then.
Okay. But my second question that I really want you to answer is then, how do you hold the people that you believe that there is no hope that they are going to actually wake up and understand this? How do you think about them? How do you feel about them? How do you hold them in your head and heart? How do you do that?
In the same way I hold all sentient beings that are suffering unconsciously, including the animals. How else can I do it? I wish for the liberation of their suffering, but I can only do so much. It's up to them at a certain point, don't you think? We do what we can. If people are not responding, that's their choice. They have, on this planet, the right of free will is absolute. You can't influence anybody according to your will. They have to influence themselves according to their own will. And with animals, they have no choice. So we have to help them, and we do help them, and we do jump in, and we do things, and we do all kinds of things, from disruptions, et cetera, et cetera. I've participated in everything other than going inside a facility and rescuing animals. I've done every form of activism, animal-wise. So all I can say is I hold them in my heart with compassion, the same way I wish for them the best. But with humans, it's a different story, because they can think consciously and make decisions, and those decisions they have to be responsible for. So if they're choosing not to, then I stay neutral with that, because I don't want to get involved in that. That's just going to drag me back into something that isn't going to go where I want to go. And I'm going to interest and find the people who want to go forward into this new form of accelerated collective evolution. And those people will just show up and they'll respond, and we will create something that's never been created before. Because I've already been in all the teachings I've had in my life, and I've had many, I've studied with many enlightened beings and masters on this planet. And, it influenced me deeply until I found my own source of that inside myself. And what I've seen is what is happening now. We are the transitional people. We are the people that are going to bring through the collective super consciousness into the world. Before, in the past, it was always superstars like a Buddha or a Christ or a Jalaluddin Rumi, all these guys who stood out all by themselves, and everybody around them just kind of bowed down and said, geez, I can't even get near that. It's not that way anymore. Now it's all about everybody starting to take responsibility for your own awakening, because if you do, it will happen. It's really that simple, because I believe the great mother energy, however you want to call it, is coming through and supporting that on our scale, on the human scale now, not on the superstar scale, which is more like a stellar phenomena where all these superstar Buddhas came in thousands of millions. That's not what's happening. We all have to get involved now and own it. Once you do, and you can ask any of these guys, most of them are here at this meeting that have already been touched by it. They're already starting to own that and act on it, because they know it's true too. And it's so that's all I can do, Anne, is just hold space in my heart and love. But if they're not going to go along, neutralize. I neutralize. I'm an old martial artist since 1970. I've been doing it forever. For me, it's the way of peace now, just like Uya Shiba, the guy who created Aikido. It's all about, get out of the way. if they're not going to work with you. If they're going to work with you, then you dance with them. So it's really like that, and that's the best you can do. Otherwise, you're just going to get in a fight, and you're going to try and convince, and it's really you and your ego trying to convince them. So what's the point of doing that? You're trying to win them over according to you. Who are you? Who am I? Let them decide on their own when the time is right for them. Did that answer a little bit of what you were asking, Anne?
That helps.
Okay.
That helps.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not everything.
I have a lot of thinking and meditating to do on the subject, but I periodically find myself coming to a place of pretty serious anger at what we have done.
Don't we all?
Okay. Cool.
Anyway, that's as much as I can say right now and get away with while I'm at work. I'm going to go silent again, but thanks for giving me a little space.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dharmendra. Dan, I think you were next in the queue.
Melissa was also in the queue
Melissa.
at some point.
Yeah, thank you. I'd
Yeah,
like to speak.
I say Melissa, and then Jamin, and then Dan, because Dan already talked for a little bit. Okay, go ahead, sweetheart. We're listening.
Hi, Anne. I love your voice. I just want to thank you for your beautiful feminine, divine feminine sensitivity in your voice. Personally, I believe that we each have a different role to play on this plane while we're here. Help create this transformation on this planet. And I don't know if this will help you, but I am filled with such grief over what we've done on this planet, and baffled that we don't know better, although I think we do, that we got stuck in this weird story of how to live on this planet. But I find storytelling and art is a beautiful vehicle for helping people to embrace a new way and to transform themselves. And I'm not really attached to the end. So I suggest that as a possible vehicle for you, somehow through your own creativity and your own sensitivity, to work with people and just stay in that place of compassion and for even though we're with cities here on the planet. I also find that using self speak out for the other species, and however you choose to do that, through poetry to do that, beneficial and help go beyond just being angry. Not that anger isn't it's not a bad thing, and I think it's an important motivator, and it's an understandable emotion. So I just wanted to add that, and I hope that's helpful for you and everyone. Yeah, okay.
Beautiful, sweetheart. Thank you. And I just want to throw in my 2 cents.
Hey, Jamin, it might be a good idea for you to turn off video because you guys have been pretty choppy.
So one is that, that's better. Can you guys hear me now? Thumbs up? Okay, good. So, we're living under this horrific paradigm. Guy McPherson says we're born into captivity in this, current culture of hoarding, and that's what leads to the destruction, because that's where 99% of our focus goes. It's hoarding without regard to consequences for other people or planet. Dan has articulated that well with Iverson. He's covered a few times, and I just want to say that just like Gandhi was able to topple the British Empire, by far the most powerful empire of its day. The sun never sets on the British Empire and all that stuff. He was able to topple it not with violence, but with a new paradigm that became so irresistible that everybody joined, and it made it so blatantly obvious that the violent way was just wrong. And it just, how beautiful is that? And I think we're at that kind of moment now, except and that was, of course, a collective intelligence. Yes, Gandhi was the quote-unquote leader, a very humble leader at that. But now it's the collective intelligence or accelerated collective evolution, as Dharmendra calls it. Another thing I want to mention about, Donald Trump and all this darkness that's cast over the land, a friend of ours in San Diego showed us a sign from Costa Rica that he had photographed that reads, the greatest threat to life on earth is the belief that someone else will fix it, right? And thank you, Donald Trump, for shattering that belief.
Really?
Donald Trump, the president of Brazil, all these other corrupt leaders, it is now blatantly obvious, right? I came of age in the Ronald Reagan era, and everybody at the time, not me, but I mean, just like the majority of Americans, thought, hey, Ronnie's going to fix everything, and so we can take our hands off the wheel. Anyway, just wanted to make those comments. Going on mute, and we got a lot of folks here, so let's keep it concise. And back, I'm going on mute. Back to you, Benjamin.
I think Dan, you're next in the queue.
Yeah. So just a little follow-up on some of the things that have been added to the conversation. I think that with Donald Trump or Bolsonaro in Brazil, Xi in China, Putin, even though these individuals are just human beings like anybody else, you have the same emotions, same kind of cognitive processes, etc. The way we are by human nature is, again, it's hierarchical. And, you could listen to Gandhi, you could listen to the Pope, you could listen to Xi in China, you can listen to Donald Trump for a lot of people. But what's going to happen is those who are in positions of power, particularly with the way the media is in our mass populations, individuals in positions of power, leaders, it's like, same thing as back in hunting gathering days. You know, you'd have pretty much the leader of a tribe. You maybe would have some elders who would function as the legal system, you know, making decisions. We don't change that much in terms of human nature. And today, those who have, you know, the bully pulpit, who are in positions of leadership, when they tell a population something is this way or that way, it tends to be believed by many, many people, really the vast majority of people. And that's something that just has to be understood. And even though I can think a certain way and I can think of myself as an individual, I'm still part of a group, a population, you know, different groups perhaps. And there's always the leadership structure. And like I've said before many times on the social club, when we're children, you know, young children, we are programmed to believe what the elders tell us is true and what's right and wrong, because we have no experience in the world. If we don't listen to them and assimilate what they say, we're not going to survive very well. Even though we're all adults now, we still have the same problem. If I'm ignorant about something and somebody who's an authority figure, a leadership person, tells me this is how it is, my natural instinct is going to be to believe that person. It's a very powerful dynamic in human nature. And the only reason at this point in time, you know, because I do believe that time is very short here. You know, it's not like we have probably till 2050, 2100. We may have, you know, Jamin, the others, you know, we may have some conceptual framework to implement solar radiation management. That would be great. But there are many, many forces that stand in the way, and we just don't have a lot of time for kind of, you know, stair-step evolution to take place in consciousness. Anyway, I've said enough. Thank you.
I think Dharmendra had a comment. He said, the new way will be synarchical. I like that word.
I need to look it up. I think I get it.
And Evan is in the queue.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump on this idea of the elder sort of patronage, and how in this new world we're living in, we aren't confined to the elders in our local neighborhoods or tribes. The internet has made it so we can seek out the elders whose wisdom resonates with us the most. To the point where, as Nolan and I have talked about, we don't just have one father, but we have many fathers all across the internet, and many mothers, and we can learn from all of their wisdom now. And it's like, it's not just the one best father or the one best mother wisdom. They all come together to create this like super hyper mom, hyper dad, which is just like a compilation of all the wisdom. And I don't know, I think that through accelerated collective evolution, that we're kind of stirring that pot even more, and especially with the technology, I think I think those stairs can pick up pretty quickly, in my opinion.
So this is Anne again. There are a couple of things that were particularly helpful to me personally. Actually, I mean, everything was helpful, but a couple of things that were particularly helpful. One was, and I don't remember who said it, but the idea that Trump is creating a distraction, and that's actually a good thing to give the rest of us time to figure out how to do something. You know, whether that's really accurate or not, I will tell you that I read a fiction novel some years ago. I don't even remember the title, but there was this little piece in it where the world is falling apart for this character. And a friend of hers says, well, when something new wants to be born, it has to create a distraction so that it has privacy and time to be born. So all this crap that's happening in your life is really okay because it's the distraction to allow the new thing to be born. And I have thought about that previously in regards to Trump and all of the things that have happened, but had forgotten it again. And so that was helpful to think about that there is this new thing being born and he's just part of this great distraction so that we can do this. That was one particularly important thing. And I have already forgotten what the other one was. There was another point that was particularly important, but maybe I will remember it again. The idea of art and, the point about understanding that most people, most humans are not going to get this, are not going to come. My immediate reaction to that is then why are we out talking about this and having conferences and doing protests and all of that? And then immediately on the heels of that is because there's a few other people, I don't know how many, but some percentage that are looking for us, right? That they haven't quite broken out yet, but they're looking for us. And so we need to be out saying something so that they can find us and come to us. And I just need to do some more work on being at peace with that idea that most humans aren't going to get this and letting that go. Letting that go, letting them go. I don't know, because the arguments aren't working clearly. The science isn't working to convince people. But we want to keep being out in front and saying these things so that the few that are looking for this information will know where to find us. So, and of course, using art is helpful. I have said on these calls before, I need humor. I need to figure out some way to bring humor into this, which is very hard for me. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to read a comment from Dharmendra unless he wants to read it or speak.
Yeah, I'll read it since I made a mistake and it doesn't come out right. I'm not that great at typing. No, the whole work is about deconditioning. Paradoxically, by absorbing the shadow through the heart in total acceptance, we transcend the habitual ritualized behavior patterns that Daniel is so good at pointing out that we have. And can act from a place beyond the cathexis, that's a word, Google it if you don't know it, of the ego image ingrained in childhood, and can begin to have the direct possibility of real action from the ground of essence. It's only from there we're going to change anything, because all the rest of it is that the ego image ingrained in childhood, and will repeat everything that's just got us into this mess in the first place. And it's all about doing that, which I do. It sounds fancy, but it really, you guys know. You've tasted it already. I invite everybody though. Vegan Synergy Meditation, man. It's the bridge. It's the bridge. It's the bridge. Rainbow Bridge.
Thank you, Dharmendra. Jamin, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Benjamin. We've been meeting for a little under an hour, and a lot of these are recurring themes. And I would like to propose that we, and this is a proposal. I want to hear people's feedback. Feel free to disagree, but I'd like to propose that we, at some point, sooner rather than later, shift gears to talking about what I believe to be one of the primary mechanisms for shifting us out of the current paradigm and into a new paradigm, which is the very tangible solution of cooling the planet. We were down in San Diego. We got 3 inches of rain in 48 hours. Annual rainfall for San Diego is 9 inches. We got a third of the annual rainfall in 48 hours. I think that broke records. It was absolutely gushing rain. Dan's Lake in Chicago, Lake Michigan is filling up. I don't need to tell you guys about all the crazy weather that's going on, but it's only accelerating. And I feel like the window that was slow closing fast one, I believe, the most powerful mechanism. Oh, you can't hear me. Okay, I'm sorry. I forgot to turn off my video.
No worries.
Okay.
It just cut out just right for a second there. We caught the whole, most of it. Just
Gotcha. Okay, very good. So what I'd like to propose is we talk SRM and the strategy for getting SRM implemented.
Yes.
Right? Everybody gets the technology. How do we get it implemented? The big answer is collective intelligence, which is what we're practicing right here. But then we need to even focus that onto a very tangible track, a very, step-by-step strategy. And the one that we've been kicking around is that of, building a planetary federation of coastal communities. The coastal communities are getting, wiped out in various forms right now, and they're all in a new way. I'd like kind of permission from the group to go there, because I know we're talking about other stuff right now. So I'm gonna cap it at that for now. But if people are game, let me know, and if you're not game, let us know too. To shift gears to the very practical, because I really think this can inspire humanity that, wow, we actually can save ourselves and the planet, and we've got to get brass tacks real fast, or we're going down real fast. Going on mute.
I would like to hear people discuss their feelings on this idea of a planetary or federation of coastal communities. Because I personally think this idea extends beyond coastal communities in the future. Just this basic idea of ecological solidarity, where the biomes that we inhabit have their own unique sets of issues, and the people who understand them best are those who share those biomes across the world. Like another one would be landlocked countries who struggle with like not having water. And so at some point they too would need to have some sort of federation of landlocked communities. But yeah, I would like to hear people toss the idea around.
Yeah, I definitely, I like the idea of the coastal community, since there is such a dramatic impact being seen there right now. And then the only thought I had is maybe at some point you could just drop coastal and it's just a planetary federation of communities, and then because each community is going to have its own particular struggle, so we can acknowledge that and acknowledge the fact that we're all choosing to come together too.
Jamin, you have your hand up. Dan is in the queue, and Fred is also.
All right, so it sounds like we've got consensus for talking Federation of Coastal Communities. First of all, the reason, why the focus on coastal communities. So if you think about it, all the different, peoples of the world, the different nations of the world, cultures, etc., there's so much difference, right? But coastal communities all share one thing in common: love of the ocean, love of the sea, love of the water, right? So no matter what country you're on, no matter what coast you're on, that's something we all have in common. And we're all facing sea level rise, storm surges, cliffside erosion, flooding, et cetera, right? Even Dan in the Midwest is part of a coastal community. So that's the logic there. Having said that, totally agree with you, Suzanne. We need to drop the coastal at some point and just have a federation of communities. But I'm kind of thinking, how do we unite humanity on a planetary scale that transcends and, in a sense, leapfrogs current national politics, which are undoubtedly broken with a capital B, right? Imagine all these local coastal communities coming together. So since there's consensus that we go there, we met a couple times with my cousin John in San Diego, who's a captain with basically, San Diego rescue, lifeguards, etc. It's kind of like basically Baywatch for San Diego County, and he's been at that for pretty much his whole career. He's now a captain, so very senior, and he knows like fire chiefs throughout Southern California cities. All these first responders. So what we're envisioning is bring collective intelligence to bring together coastal communities where we tap the leadership of first responders in each coastal community, right? Empower them with the science, a la Dr. Ye Tao of Harvard, who came up with the concept of the vast arrays of floating mirrors, SRM, solar radiation management in the oceans. And then also with the artists such as Melissa, who's spearheading the Pacifica project. I'm co-pilot there; she's pilot, and so through this unlikely combination of scientists, first responders, and artists, we create nuclei of leadership and community in each and every coastal community around the world. Bring them together on a whole taxonomy of topics and a whole taxonomy of video conferences such as this one, but on increasingly specific topics of how are we going to do this, and in this way unite the coastal communities of the world. The rest of the world will pay attention. Half the world's population is within X number of miles from a coastline, right? And so much of the world's wealth, so much of the world's development, think of all the rail, etc., on the world's coasts. So it's a way to really wake up the world, and for a specific subset of humanity, maybe half of humanity, to really take the lead in a very specific way. I mean, it's from the coasts that these arrays of mirrors will be launched and managed. So that's the big idea, and I think it's a freaking great one. I've been gently lobbying Dr. Ye Tao of Harvard to join us for a West Coast tour, where we give a series of press conferences and really wake the world up that we got to do this and we can do this. I've mentioned before on the social club the big sign we're going to be building for Pacifica, where I'll be wearing a fireman costume, a fireman suit, an actual fireman suit. This on the front it'll say "Californians stand your ground." That's provocative and full of multiple entendres, but really standing our ground in terms of not letting our coastline disappear. And then on the back it would say, "Climate change is real, so is the solution. Which side are you on?" ? And wake people up that we have a solution, because so many people are feeling hopeless that there isn't one. Well, there is one, and it's called SRM, and it's called collective intelligence. And we just start to tell that story and let it go viral and build out this network of coastal communities. Let all the coastal communities of the world know, but led by the first responders. Imagine if the fire chief of San Diego contacts the fire chief of Los Angeles and the fire chief of San Francisco and the fire chief of Portland and says, "Hey, we got to, when your firemen are off duty, which is 2/3 of the time, let them volunteer by going door to door, knocking on the doors, handing out flyers, saying, look, we're the first responders. We're the ones on the front lines, standing here to defend you. For us to do our job, we need you to do your job and support SRM, support cooling the planet. We have a solution. We have the solution. Here's all the scientific data. We're not scientists, we're firemen. But we listen to the scientists, and we listen to the scientists and engineers who've come up with the solution, and we endorse it, we support it. What a powerful message. Everybody loves firemen. Everybody's going to listen to them. They can rally the communities. All politics is local. National politics is broken. So let's bring back local. Going on mute. Thanks, everybody.
Let's see, we've got Dan and then Fred.
So I guess I have some thoughts, kind of conflictual about the idea. Jamin, I remember, this sounds good, conceptually it all sounds great, but it's reminiscent in my mind of we're going to mobilize the Catholic hierarchy, and ultimately the Pope. Remember, not that long ago, you put a lot of work into that, Jamin, you and Jamie. And you know, these ideas, you know, yeah, it would be great if you could get all the first responders mobilized, but in you know, just the same way as if somehow the Catholic hierarchy had become mobilized. And, you know, the Pope could then influence the other religious leaders. But, you know, first responders, generally speaking, maybe not in Berkeley, California, and other places that are similar, but the first responders, mostly across the country, including up and down the coast, the Gulf Coast, etc., these are individuals who, by and large, are going to be much more conservative in terms of their thinking, and they're oriented, they're trained to adapt to problems, you know, in certain ways. They're very trained, you know. It's a bureaucratic thing, but I would say this, and the other thing I'll just throw in here, another discordant thought is, so coastal communities here in the United States, if you're talking the West Coast, California, Oregon, Washington, that's an extraordinarily wealthy area of the country. And so is the Northeast coast and part of the Southeast coast too. We're talking about very privileged, wealthy areas. But when you start to go beyond that to other places, for example, you know, the Bangladesh-India problem, where India has already determined that people who live in Bangladesh are going to get flooded out. And they aren't going to allow, if they can help it, people from Bangladesh crossing over into India. They've militarized that border. And I believe they do have orders to shoot to kill. That's a very ugly manifestation of how humans are tribalistically. India is India, Bangladesh is Bangladesh, and if you get flooded out, we're not going to allow you in. And the United States military has similar plans here. You know, everybody thinks, well, Trump and, you know, the problem with the border and the immigration. Since the mid-1990s, the United States military has accepted that we're going to have abrupt climate change at some point, and it's going to be very disruptive, and there's going to be lots of climate change refugees trying to get into the United States. And their plans from the mid-1990s were to militarize the border and not to let anybody come in through the Caribbean or up through Mexico. So these are...
Dan, not to be a jerk, but what's your point?
Okay, here's my point. Okay, here's what my point is. I think that it's important to get the information out. Let's say on solar radiation management, as it has been recently discussed. To get the information out, this is something which could solve a problem. But at the same time, people need to know, and that includes on the, you know, wealthy West Coast and East Coast, they need to understand that it's not just, you know, like here I am, okay, Lake Michigan is inundating my place, you know, along the you know, lakefront, etc. And that bothers me personally, and I don't want it to happen, and I might have to move. I hope not, you know, etc. But the thing is, you know, the climate change crisis is completely worldwide, and we have many coastal communities where people do not have the options that a lot of people on the West and the East Coast have. It's you know, kind of a thing. And so I think it's important that the you know, an understanding be addressed that first responders might be very interested in being, a part of it, but as far as the modeling process goes, people need to be able to appreciate Bangladesh, other places in the world, Iran, the Mideast, Central America, Southern Mexico, etc. All these places in the world that actually are crumbling right now. These are other human beings. And if we're not going to tribalistically, too bad, you're not part of our tribe kind of a thing, then that needs to be stressed. That it's not just, we're on the coast and we're getting, people all over the world are right now getting wiped out, and they're very near, and it's going to just get worse. Right, I'll get off in one more minute. So I think that conceptually, it's a good idea, but I do feel that people need to have information presented to them in a very forceful way that lets them know what really is going on, and that what's going, just to say to somebody, what, Guy McPherson said we're going to all be extinct by 2026 for ABC reasons. That doesn't get through to people any more than a lot of other things. They need to actually, and maybe this is something for artistic people, people who are, able to create plays, movies, whatever, to be able to get through to people what it is you're actually looking at. It's a very serious kind of a thing. And you either have to acknowledge humanity, we're all going to have to be one and cooperate here, or else we're all going to go tribalistic very, very quickly. And it'll just be, let's see how we can adapt here, forget everybody else. Anyway, thank you. A few discordant notes, but I always do that.
Thank you, Dan. We've got Fred. Fred, you're up next. Then we've got Suzanne, and Jamin has his hand up.
Well, I was going to pass, and I was listening earlier when we started isolating problem areas. The reality of the, we're in one global ecosystem, actually, and when you start identifying specific, it's hard for me to explain. It's just I don't want us to forget that we can't pick one card out of this house of cards, and identify it as the leading edge, and not think that the rest of the house is affected by it. It's whatever. Yeah, so yeah, that's all I have to say, even if it's not particularly clear. It's kind of like the mind and the body relationship. The body affects how the mind works, the mind, and to focus on any one area, it seems to ignore all the other parts that are interdependent, whatever. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, I get what you mean, Fred, or I think I do, just about maybe the difference between Federation of Coastal Communities and Federation of Communities, maybe what that focus should be. I put my name in the queue specifically for the first responder idea, and Dan talking about how a lot of first responders fall on the conservative end of the spectrum. And I was wondering if there's a way of maybe reframing first responders, or like Jamin, if your cousin would be willing to kind of tell the story of like a first responder is a altruistic hero in the responsive sense, but what about the proactive sense of like of like stopping something before it happens. You know, that's what they're standing up for, instead of waiting to be the first responder after a disaster strikes. These people are taking the next steps. Like, you know, we already look to them as heroes, and now some of these heroes are stepping up and saying, like, I'm not just going to be a responder, I'm going to be, you know, an actor, that kind of thing. I don't know.
Well, I'd like to jump in here real quick and connect this to what Dan was talking about with this information and this media that basically makes the problem just unignorable. Because if we really collect, if we collect media and put it kind of all in one place that demonstrates demonstrates the effects of climate change, that's one giant topic. But we could demonstrate the effects of broken systems. We could demonstrate the effects of poorly structured economies and things like that. There's kind of two sides to what we're doing, which is, first of all, addressing how the old world is crumbling and how it's not just a prediction that it will crumble, like Guy McPherson is making, but it is actually crumbling right now. And Guy McPherson has just seen how it's crumbling now and then projected into the future and been extremely concerned. So I think we need to do essentially that same thing for other people and make it as explicit as possible what is happening right now, and kind of leave it up for the general population to come to their own conclusion that, oh, this is a very slippery slope and this is going in a horrible direction. And then the flip side of all of that is, well, these are all of our plans for the future, and look at how bright that is, right? Here's something to run away from, and here's something to run towards, basically. I think if we have to do the 1-2 punch. Otherwise, we risk just totally depressing people, or people don't get it because they think we're too idealistic and not talking about like the real world, like hard facts or something. So got to hit them with the 1-2 punch. That's my input.
I will second that. I like the idea of bringing it full circle, like providing them with the problem and the solution as a package. And I have a comment from Dharmendra and then from Evan. Dharmendra says, is there a way to get a prototype version of this up and running on a local scale in just one of these coastal communities, where there's the possibility of getting enough funding to start testing and measuring impact environmentally? It seems to me we need to zero in on that community most willing to consider these plans. So somehow put out a blanket message to as many coastal communities as possible, zeroing in on first responders as an example, and then start with that community most responsive to begin working the collective intelligence to see who is capable of making the connection. Just the beginning of an approach to the practical envisioning of the solution. Thank you, Dharmendra. And Evan says, rather than recruiting only firemen, we should dispatch people to recruit all first responders, police, EMTs. Yeah, anyone involved in public safety, really. And we challenge them to, like Suzanne said, to take a proactive approach. There are so many industries that are banking on, right now, these current systems that are banking on people not being proactive, such as healthcare and whatnot. But we've seen the success of being proactive. We know that it can prevent, 90 whatever percentage of diseases that people are being treated for in America. And it's a great example of how being proactive can help. So I think that's a great message.
So Jamin has his hand raised,
Jamin.
and then Anne and Dan.
Yep.
Okay, thanks everybody. So I want to second Suzanne's and Evan's message about, well, first of all first responders, absolutely. I use firemen kind of as an example, right? Because they're the quintessential, and the world is on fire right now. And also,
We've lost you, Jamin.
regards prevention, I mean, you know, okay, if somebody else speak until I get better signal, then I'll jump.
All right.
I seem to have better signal now. I got 2 bars. Can you hear me now? Thumbs up if you can. Thumbs down if you can't. Okay, good. All right. So in terms of first responders and prevention, look, you know, we all remember going back to K through 5. You know, we'd have school assemblies, and the firemen would come out and tell us all about fire prevention. It's not like they're just sitting back at the fire station smoking cigarettes, waiting for a fire to start somewhere. They're out there pushing prevention. So this is their job. This is what they do. And, you know, I single out firemen because everybody loves firemen. Not everybody loves police, but everybody loves firemen. And the planet is on fire. But absolutely all first responders. My cousin, who's a captain in lifeguard and rescue, he's not a fireman, but he's a first responder. That's why I've been going after him. And he's game. He loves the idea. Also, I also want to encourage people, like, if you're kind of uncomfortable with the idea, rather than just kind of give a stream of consciousness of, well, I don't know. Yeah, look, you have a better idea? If you do, out with it. If you don't, let us develop this one rather than filibuster us into an early bedtime. Okay, go on you. Oh, sorry, Melissa has stuff to say. Go ahead, sweetheart.
So I hope this isn't a deviation from that conversation, but one of the things that came up when Jamin was talking with family members and friends about SRM was how many people said, well, we've never heard of this before. You need to get this news out there. And we went to the aquarium in Long Beach. They have a new exhibit, which is a cinematographer, cinema and a movie about, you know, what's happening to the planet, what we need to be doing. And of course, it was mainly propaganda and very disappointing. But what Jamin and I were talking about was actually creating a media movement that talks about all these things we're talking about and pushes these ideas like SRM, so it can fill the media and people can find out about it. So I just would love your guys' feedback about that. And I think having Jamin and any number of us talking and being filmed and getting this out there could be really a powerful tool. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, sweetheart. Go on unmute.
I have something to input there. I think that part of our going out and broadcasting and getting the message out through media is going to be listening to what's going around in the collective mind currently through the media, and using that as part of our output. So kind of basically just joining the conversation that already exists out there that we're not essential members of in terms of number of audience members. But I think that could lend itself to a sort of credibility, like rub off, if we're responding to these people that already have a lot of media attention, and then we're coming up with very well formulated responses and demonstrations of things that we think these people with large audiences should support. And then we start getting a bunch of upvotes on social media for stuff like that. Eventually it's going to become unignorable, and whichever like celebrity that we're responding to, probably many of them will be responding to, it will eventually be something that they have to confront. And then by that time, it reaches who knows how many people.
rather than starting an entirely new conversation, we're actually just piggybacking on the slow conversation that's going through the media now, and just
and that's recognizing that collective intelligence has existed and does exist already, but it's poorly organized, and people aren't really talking directly to each other. It's a bunch of these celebrity types that they get up on stage and a bunch of people ask them questions and they respond. And then another one of the celebrities gets up on stage on a different event. But you don't see them talking with each other very much directly and then publicly broadcasting that. So that's, I think, something we should also be encouraging. Because once these quote unquote celebrities start teaming up, then I think that's going to convince, and I'm thinking about Dan here. I think that's going to convince a lot of people that, even if they're just kind of unquestionably taking that from those celebrities that are joining up now, that could still have a very positive impact overall.
So this is Ian. I just want to say that I don't think that any of us have any idea who the group will be that takes this truly global. So the idea that there is a solution that we can implement and takes it global. We don't know who that's going to be. I certainly believe, and I'm guessing most, if not all of the people on this call believe that, because if we didn't believe it was going to happen, then what's the point, right? So whether it's a religious institution, which would blow me away, but that would be delightful, or first responders, or coastal communities, or PTOs of elementary, I don't know who it's going to be, right? We need to be putting these plans together and putting them out there, and then supporting the hell out of any group that runs with them in any way, shape, or form, because we don't know where it's going to come from. The world has not actually been in this position before. This is brand new territory, and we need all the ideas we can possibly get, and we need to be supportive of whatever. And 99% of them, right? Only one of them actually has to work. And it's highly unlikely to be the first or second, or really 10th or 20th that's going to take off. We have to keep going and hold the belief that it's going to work, and that it may be a bizarre group that ends up making this a dinner topic conversation, regularly, that blows us all away. It may not be something that we're going to be able to think of, but slowing us down or poo-pooing any of these ideas at this point, I want us out there as much as possible, and again, just supporting whatever happens and knowing that it's going to take a long time and we can't slow down.
Thank you, Anne. Dan, I think you were in the queue after that.
So let me, I've spoken before, probably not recently, maybe I have, about my experience with first responder issues when I was working for the Chicago Department of Public Health. We received some money, a large amount of federal money, to get prepared for a bioterror attack. And I was recruited to participate in that, where I would be at one of these places where people would come to who thought they were sick. And then we would, send some people to see the nurses and doctors and others to go to a holding area. And because of the lack of time, so what happened was the way this was rolled out, and I think it captures a lot of problems that could be, kind of noted. So a lot of money, a lot of, workshops and getting prepared to do this. But they always used anthrax as the agent. That was, and they told all of us, but first of all, anthrax is not something that you can, pass on to another person. It's not communicable. And so right there, that was a huge problem. It wasn't realistic in terms of the seriousness of the threat. And then they told us, well, we're going to give you guys medication for you and your families. So don't be afraid of being out there like that. And and at that time, I raised up two issues. I said, don't you think it would be a good idea, since it's probably not going to be anthrax, it's probably going to be some sort of genetically modified smallpox or something. And don't you think it would be reasonable to give those of us you're asking us to participate, to give us some insurance? No, they could not go there. Interesting. They couldn't even entertain that idea. And the other thing was that I brought up, it was right after Fukushima. And I brought up the fact that when Fukushima happened in Japan, the engineers who actually put their lives on the line to go down there under the water and explore what was going on were people who were seniors, maybe over 55, because the idea was those individuals had already lived a good piece of life, and the younger people, hadn't, and so on. And so those and this is in Japan, which of course is a very homogeneous society, one big tribe, and the expectation, the way people are socialized is you give it up, you do sacrifice for the group. That's how we are in Japan, or at least back then. And I brought that up also. I said, maybe we should really focus on those of us who are older and not try to coerce. But what they had actually planned was if something did go down, everybody would be forced, you'd just simply be like you're in the military, you'd be forced to do whatever or else. And so I think that, they didn't want to scare people. Well, it's anthrax. That's all we're dealing with. You're going to get medication. You'll be okay. And we really don't want to consider insurance because that costs some money. And we don't really want to think about something like, people might be dying, in this first responders dying. And so I just think that, again, with first responders do deserve a lot of respect. As Jamin says, everybody pretty much likes the fire departments because they're obviously trying to save things, and the police have got a mixed bag reputation. I think, Jamin, I do think the first responder idea is good, but I really think that part of it has to be, as I've said all the way from the beginning, is that people need to know it's not anthrax that you're going to probably be dealing with. And it's not like you and your wonderful families are going to be okay, maybe not everybody else. And you have to realize the nature of the threat. And we also, I think, in this situation, because it is global, it's everywhere, but in some places it's already happening, not really much in the United States yet. And I think it's important that we be able to reach out to other people, and whether they're in Bangladesh or in China or wherever, and be able to emphasize that we all need to stop being tribalistic in how we view these problems. And that we have to be able to say, you know, you're in Bangladesh, I don't know you, you know, you have a different religion, different language, different racial makeup, etc. But we're all human beings, and we need to, in this point in time, all become brothers and sisters and go forward together. Because without that kind of cooperation and an appeal to people, whether they're, you know, and here in the United States, whether they're, you know, the so-called deplorables who, you know, or whatever, the thing is, we have to be able to stop the tribal divisions, reach out to other people, let them know what's going on. I don't want India to let people in Bangladesh drown. It just violates my sense of being a human being. But we have to be able to, you know, come together in some way like this. All right, I'm going to mute out. Thanks.
I'd like to just state a quick follow-up comment, even though I'm not in the queue. So, amen, hallelujah to everything you just said, Dan. And the thing is, see, the whole point of the Federation of Coastal Communities is precisely that it unites us all, right? You know, you point out differences between rich and poor, Bangladesh and India and all. I get all that. We all get all that. The cool thing about the Federation of Coastal Communities is it unites peoples of the coasts, peoples of the oceans, regardless of color of skin, race, religion, location around the world. These are all people getting affected in the same way, fundamentally the same way. Storm surges are storm surges, no matter what part of the world. So is sea level rise. So let's all get together and recognize this commonality that we have, that the ocean, we've turned the ocean from friend to enemy, and we need to turn it back into friend again by cooling it down. It's as simple as that. It's really simple, and therefore I believe really unifying. I also want to second what Ann Mitchell said. Brilliant stuff. We don't know how this solution is going to come. We keep trying. Let's keep trying. And everyone is so desperate right now that I really think that the first credible solution is really going to get people excited and united. Also, you know, previous examples of anthrax and all that really has very little relevance here to this one. It's not like we're going to ask the first responders to go out and put out and, you know, deploy the arrays. We're asking the first responders to unite the communities to get behind SRM. Going on mute.
Yeah, if I could just, Jamin, I just want to jump in just quickly in response to what you said. You know, the anthrax, the reason I'm bringing up the anthrax was because this was a first responder public health response to a potentially very deadly situation. And the threat was minimized. Now, I know that, you know, that's not what you're talking about, but there needs to just be an awareness that all along with this climate change problem, it's been an inability of, you know, whether it's the scientists who kind of know what's up, whether it's people who have researched it and know how dire the situation is. But there's been this kind of idea we don't want to upset people emotionally. We don't want them to, you know, be scared. We don't want them to, you know, worry about things too much. That's a problem here. It's a huge problem. And my experience is, unless you really have it on an emotional level, you know, unless you really in your guts know what is coming potentially, then it's very, very hard to appreciate what the threat is. And one final thing, you know, it's with the anthrax, not modified, you know, because if you said if there ever was a bioterror attack, and by the way, the city of Chicago and nobody's prepared for anything like that if it ever does happen. But the thing is, by simply putting it in terms of anthrax, medication for your families, relax, guys. We know you're going to have to, you know, be out there, but it's not that big of a deal. This is how human nature operates. And what has to be understood here is that it's not going to be anthrax with abrupt climate change. It's going to be modified smallpox or something worse. And you need to feel the urgency. And I'm not saying Guy McPherson is correct in his timing. And I listened to, by the way, I listened to the video on solar radiation management, where Guy McPherson was there. I thought it was great. I loved the way everything was presented. And I think it's a really good idea. And it may be the only thing that can be done in a short period of time, but in any case, the resistance that exists is huge. And whatever gets done with first responders and coastal communities, I just really feel there has to be some way to get through to people. This is a very, very dire threat to you, your families, your loved ones, and people over in Bangladesh or anywhere else in the world. They're getting it right now. They're getting it in Mexico, parts of Mexico, Central America. It's happening. We need to be able to acknowledge that and try to get people to, pull away from the psychopathic kind of culture that, a lot of people in this country and other places now subscribe to. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Evan.
Do you want me? I can read Ann's comment saying, so I think we should put together a list of all the possible groups we think could have a positive impact on bringing climate change solutions to the forefront of the global conversation. For example, I think it would be fabulous if global transvestite chorus singers / dancers could bring this message to the masses. Could be fun enough and so unlikely that people would actually listen. I'm trying to bring more humor to this. Well, I appreciate it. I kind of wanted to tag on what you had said earlier, Ann, which this idea of we shouldn't really be putting all our eggs in one basket, because we can't see which group is going to really take this to the masses. And I kind of think of it like if you're a venture capitalist, you're going to invest in a bunch of little startups, not really knowing which one's going to work, and then one of them might be Facebook. But we're just doing this with our information and our hope. And kind of to touch on something that Fred had said earlier that I really like is this idea that this we don't want to focus too much on one area, because it is a mind-body solution of where you need all your organs to work if you're going to have the rest of you work. But I think that focusing on the coastal communities is really impactful, because for the most part, I think we hyper-focus on where we are too much. And if you're living in a coastal community, it would also be easy to not realize that there are people all over the world who are experiencing similar issues to you. And then if you're living away from the coast, it would be really easy to not realize that what's going on the coast is one day going to affect you. And by bringing together the people of the coastal communities, it will give them more volume, so as to potentially reach the people inland and spread this message that we do need to come together. In the future, the only reason that people of the coasts need to have their own private meeting is maybe because they need to deal with coastal related things that people in the Midwest just don't want to hear about. But in the end, it is all an organized, cumulative effort. Anyway, I like that.
Go ahead, Fred. It doesn't look like we've got anybody in the queue right now.
In lieu of, the notion that somebody out of somewhere, hopefully, is going to be the one who's going to come up with the solution or the idea that everybody can sort of understand and integrate is, I don't know. I mean, I can't comprehend it, because look at the people who've had the greatest impact in the world in terms of, you know, unifying ideas are like Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, and look where that has brought us. I mean, it's not like these people have come up with an idea that the planet is willing to go, okay, this is the way. So I guess my question is, you know, that being a reality, what do we do? What do we do while we're waiting for this idea to emerge? Because the likelihood of all of these cultures being willing to drop their predispositions, their belief systems, you know, what if a UFO landed and said, okay, Christianity, Muhammad, okay, let's forget it. People would just be like, their ontological understanding would just be just blown up. How, you know, it's just, yeah. I mean, so what do we do since we were hoping to get to the Pope? Yeah, what do we do while we're waiting for this idea to emerge? That's what I have to say.
I would like to give a shot at that. I like the idea of creating the new culture and economies and systems that we're going to need that are sustainable, to start envisioning them now and start hashing out how it would work if we were to reach that point. We start imagining from the ground up, like what would even a house look like? What would a society look like? What would a city look like? And start just making massive amounts of lists and data and planning. And that way, when this does happen, we'll at least have some foundation to fall back on. And I wanted to follow that up with, it's kind of what Dr. Rao is doing right now, is he's kind of outlining a global sustainable culture that would work in this scenario. And Suzanne and I have gotten kind of involved in the Climate Healers Project because we were so interested in this. And I'm kind of bouncing around here, but we kind of see it as, like Jamin has brought up in the past, it goes bifold. It goes hand in hand with solar radiation management. There has to be something that catches us, because solar radiation management doesn't solve the problem, right? We are still going to be creating fossil fuels. We're still going to be doing all the things that we don't want to be doing. It is going to solve global warming. And when that happens, we have to be prepared with the rest of the solution. And I feel like the rest of the solution we can start working on now, if that makes sense. And
oh, sorry.
You can jump in if you want to, Jamin. We've got Dan and Ann in the queue.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to do a quick follow on, which is part of the rules that we can do that. The cool thing about SRM, it's definitely not the solution to all our problems. It's only the solution to what is by far the most urgent problem and the biggest driver of the rest of our biggest problems, which is global warming. But once we solve that problem with SRM, think of the boost of confidence that humanity will have. Humanity will have a whole different relationship with itself. That yes, we can. If we can solve our biggest and most urgent problem, well, of course we can solve the rest of the problems. That's all I wanted to say. Going on mute.
Yeah, and I'm just going to jump in and say I don't believe that there is a person that's going to bring this up and make it a typical conversation. But I do believe there is some group of people, some collective that is going to make it a more acceptable conversation to say, we really do have problems and we really do have solutions. And we start here with SRM, which buys us time as far as I understand it. And then we begin to really deal with animal agriculture, because that's a long-term solution, and the end of the use of fossil fuels and sustainable renewable energy, or figuring out some other way to live. I don't think there is a single individual, and I agree that the single individuals in the past that have bubbled up, my belief is that they have caused more problems than they have solved, for the most part. But there will be some group that makes this an acceptable, normalized conversation that there are solutions to this problem. So that's all I wanted to say.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ann. It looks like Evan, I think Evan typed this. He says, a vessel, not necessarily a person.
Yeah. Or like you said, a group of people.
Yeah.
Dan?
Yeah. So just a thought about the religions and other groupings. Religions at one point in time when they were constructed were pretty adaptive. I mean, if they would, they're not going to go on that long if they're not adaptive. And so they were adaptive. But at this point in time, when we're, let's say, in an environment that we have 7.5 billion people on the planet, somewhat, there are limitations on resources, and we're in abrupt climate change, an exponential problem. So this is the environment. And religions that were, maybe very adaptive when, the reality was we need a lot of people, because if we don't have a lot of men ready to go to war, another tribe is going to come and wipe us out and destroy us. And so we need to have, bigger populations, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, dynamics have just been going on for a long time. Religions were very adaptive because they were able to organize people. So you're not going to be within the group, you're not going to be stealing from one another, killing one another, raping, and so on, the kinds of things that can happen. And so they've been adaptive, and we probably need something, there has to be some morality that people can be socialized into, but it has to fit the environment. And the environment we have right now, again, it's 7.5 billion people, limited resources, like fresh water, for example. And we also have abrupt climate change. And without recognizing that environment that we're actually all in, I mean, it's about as real as it could be. There's no disputing it very much. And as I said before, the fundamentalist religious people believe that there is a God up there who could fix everything. Garden of Eden could be brought back. That's not adaptive at this point in time. It's just not adaptive. And if we don't say that, if we don't question these things, it's kind of like I don't know if, politically incorrect to question anybody's religion. It's politically incorrect to question, the hierarchies that exist or something. We're trapped because it's all maladaptive at this point in time. And if we don't acknowledge that and try to quickly get it out there in the general consciousness, whether you're growing up in Saudi Arabia, China, the United States, Brazil, wherever, without this kind of questioning of how maladaptive we are now as a species. It's not just, we are born into it. Wherever we are, we get our own version of it. But structurally, it's very, very similar, in terms of what it does. So I just throw that out there. And I think, again, going forward with the coastal, first responder idea it's logical, and all of that. But I do think that people need to be able to appreciate what kind of threat you're actually facing. It's not anthrax, it's really genetically modified smallpox that's coming. And the time is very, very limited. And so we have to make some major league adaptations to this new environment. And so if solar radiation management was able to give us time, that's the hope, right, Jamin? Give us some time. And then we can, have a little more time and space to look at these other things. That would be great. And it does need to be put out there. And I think that getting together, people who actually have the skill sets to figure out how it can be implemented economically and practically and all of that is really important business. And but I again, the problem we have is most of what people are accustomed to in terms of group living arrangements, it's just very, very maladaptive, and we have to be able to question it, and be able to say, this is what I was raised with, this is how I believe, this is what I love, but actually I'm not going to be able to go, none of us can go forward any longer with that kind of a luxury in our own individual tribes. And one final thought, in the United States, because we have such diversity, that's pretty clear. No other country in the world has the kind of diversity that we have here in the United States, racially, ethnically, religiously, etc. Most other places do not have it. Or if they do have some of it, it's in a very brutal, hierarchical kind of an order. And with diversity, there's kind of a certain kind of ethics or morality that kind of follows from that, which is, let everybody have their own religion, let everybody have their own, cultural groups and everything. And in a way that's all very logical and makes a lot of sense. And at this day and age, that's what we've been having in the culture here in the United States anyway, not so much in other places. But we also have to see that there's a problem there because, it's probably necessary to be able to transcend. It's, Christian fundamentalism right now is not something which I would be prepared to say, oh, that's okay, because what follows from that and what people are willing to give their lives up for are ideas such as God will clear everything up if God wants to. And if God doesn't, the planet goes down. It's in the Bible. So even though we all, there's very good things about diversity, we still have to understand that certain manifestations of diversity are problematic. And we're not in an environment anymore where, you can just kind of, oh, let's all live and let live. Everything will be wonderful. It can't be in this environment, such a radically threatening environment. Okay, I'm out. Thank you.
Quick comment. I have a quick comment. Okay.
Oh, you're on mute, Fred.
You're on.
Fred, you're muted.
You're muted, Fred.
Okay, I think what Dan said about maladaptive is really right at the heart of the problem, is that the responses we have had historically don't work anymore. So somehow we're going to have to come up with something that everyone can relate to. And it's like Christianity is, I was listening to you, seems almost like a luxury in this country that we can think, oh, you can go to heaven and all of that, and pie in the sky. And think about all of the really poor people in the world who depend on this notion that the reward isn't on earth, it's in heaven or whatever. There's just, it's maladaptive. We have to come up with a response to real conditions now. Anyway, that really resonated with me. Not in a happy way, but I think it hit the nail on the head. Okay, I'm out.
Thanks. We've got Nolan and then Jamin.
Oh, did Suzanne get a chance?
I lost my thread.
Oh, okay. I think it's really important that we don't spend too much energy focused on basically all 7 billion people and figuring out how to get them on board. I think we need to be pretty targeted in the beginning of this and expand from where we are now and who we have now, using the people that are very close to us in the social network that's already established. And I mean, this is just getting at the very nature of collective intelligence, which is once these people are involved like we are, these questions that we're asking, that we're kind of getting hung up on, these super big questions, are going to start to be a lot easier to answer. So yeah, I guess that's all I have to say right now.
Jamin, go for it.
All right, thanks everybody. So speaking of maladaptive, I want to talk about a maladaptive syndrome that I see going on here, which is while we are trying to develop an actual solution and talk about how we might actually implement that in its various facets, we seem to continuously get sidetracked on tangential issues like religion, like tribalism, like, a lot of people still don't get that there's a problem. We get all that, but what's maladaptive about that is we're wallowing in the problem while we have a clear solution at hand. I really think we should be focusing on the solution. We could all die talking about the problem or the problems, plural, right? So I'm really making an appeal, a life-saving appeal, to focus on solutions and stop wallowing in the damn problems, okay? If you have a better solution, please, out with it. Tell us, and we can talk about that. If you don't, please have the discipline to hold your tongue while the rest of us work on the solution. And then if you have an idea for how to forward that solution, great. That's a great time to chime in. Okay? This is the social club at the end of this world. This made SRM right now on Earth. Let us please not squander this opportunity. Let us take full advantage of it. The two big solutions on the table are SRM and collective intelligence itself. Let us not dilute the punch bowl with diarrhea. Let's get on with it. Going on mute.
I'd like to just jump in real quick since I can real quick. And I second that motion. And I, for one, am just going to start jumping in if somebody's going on and on about a problem and say you're just going on. And I'm just going to do it real quick. And I'm going to say you're just going on about a problem. Because I don't feel that respects what we're doing if we going on about problem over and over and over again when what we're trying to do is work with solutions. It's disrespectful. Even if it's informative and intelligently done, I don't give a flying hoot about it. We need solutions, not a focus on problems. So that's what I'm going to do. So if you go on about it, I'm going to interrupt you.
So Jamin, what can we do to help with the Federation of Coastal Communities, and what can we do to help with the first responders? Is there something, I mean, is there something we could edit? Is there something we can write? Is there something we can, I don't know. What could this group do to help forward that idea?
Brilliant. Well, so the first thing is to talk about it, exactly what you're doing. Asking that question, that's great. That forwards the conversation, right? Putting forward ideas that forward it. So the first thing is let's stop derailing it, right? And I am, amen, hallelujah, Dharmendra. You've got balls that I'm just now growing myself. So you've inspired me to water my own and grow them. So I'm going to pile on with you. If anyone wallows more about the problem, I'm going to jump in there with you. You're not going to be kung fu fighting alone. You're going to be kung fu fighting along with me. So, Bruce,
could I jump in? Excuse me, Jim. Let me jump in. You know, okay, so I get what you're saying. You don't want to hear anything discordant because it gets in the way of the solution. Let me give you a little bit of history some people here may not be totally clued into. I'm not trying to derail getting to solutions, but let's not forget that we've had lots of ideas, lots of solutions. Jamin, personally, remember, we're going to go down to Argentina, then we're going to walk over to the coast and take a sailboat across the ocean to Africa. Then we're going to go up the coast into Europe and over to the Vatican, carrying signs, etc. That was an idea. Now, talking about that, and there's been many, many ideas, they haven't come to fruition. And a lot of times, you know, in order to come up with a solution, you have to look at the constraints and what reality is. I'm talking about the environment that we're in, and I'm talking about certain constraints. This is the social club at the end of the world. It's not the vegan hangout. It's not the solar radiation management hangout. It's a hangout where we can talk about things that are concerning at the end of the world. And so and if we go over to, I personally do not want to be in a situation where if you're going to say anything that is critical, it's a downer. It gets in the way of, where I'm at with my positive thinking. That, to me, is absurd. So I got to get going, and because of the time, and I was just getting ready to type out, but I wanted to hang around to give you a response. I know who you're talking to, and I think we need to allow discordant information about constraints and the environment. You can waste all sorts of time with a solution. We got to do this, we got to do that. And the solution is ignoring a lot of things. All right, I got to sign out. I love the conversation, and I'll hope to see you all next week.
Hey, Dan, before you go,
yeah,
you're still here. Okay. Before you go, I'd like to combine what Anne suggested earlier on the chat, which is to start a document that lists, you know, let's list the first responders, let's list coastal communities, let's list all these pathways, these potential pathways. And then right next to that, we can have, you know, obstacles or, you know, what's in our way of, you know, what are the, you know, we can have a whole spreadsheet of like, what are the opportunities, what are the obstacles, what are the, I think that we can bring it all together, and maybe if we're spending, you know, 10 minutes talking about an obstacle or 5, or, you know, we can come up with a point at which we say like, yes, let's add that to the spreadsheet, and maybe we have a separate meeting on it, or, you know, something like that. But some way to capture this so we all can keep it in our minds, because it is important when we're coming to a solution to think about the restraints or constraints and stuff like that.
Real quick, I want to add something too. It's important to know what the constraints are so you can know how to apply the solution, but to go on about constraints overly long is not productive. If you can write out the structure of constraints. In fact, you could even write a paper on it and we can all access it, put it online, or tell us where all this information is coming from. We can check it as we go, and we can compare it to the solution, because the two are interconnected. But the point is that when you bring out the constraints, that you do it in a way that adds to the conversation productively in terms of structure. Here's the structure we're dealing with. How are we going to transform this structure? Then we're taking that constraint and turning it into a way to help with the solution. Otherwise, we're just looking at how it's just a massive undertaking where we're dealing with a ton of dead weight of humanity's unconscious behaviors. And I'm just trying to say, how do we work with it? How do we take it in and use it to help us move forward by seeing what it is about it that's useful to us so we can move forward, okay? So it's not kicking out and just saying we can't have anything negative, blah, blah, blah. That's the opposite extreme. What we're saying is, how can we include that in the conversation in a productive way so it helps us to move forward so that we see the structure we're dealing with and the structure we have to transform.
And in order to do that, I think it's really important that we take time with, like, I appreciate, Dan, the constraints you're identifying. The thing that becomes really frustrating and anxiety provoking to me is that you'll identify several of them and then I'm not really sure where to start, and I feel like other people are feeling like that. So maybe part of it is we just need to slow down a little bit and be addressing one thing at a time is the sense I'm getting.
All right, listen, guys, I got to go because of the time. I hope to see everybody next week. Take
All right, and just a quick comment here. The last several comments, Suzanne, Dharmendra, Nolan, these are examples of concise comments, right? And when people go on for 7-8 minutes at a time, oh my God, it just slows everything down. It's very demoralizing. Anyway, I think we all agree with that. This is an example of a concise comment. I'm making my point and moving on. Anyway, sweetheart, you had something to say?
Let me jump in real quick, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to say it feels to me like he's just showing off how much he knows. And it's not really adding to anything we're all doing, unless we can add it in and include it in the conversation and move forward with it as a useful contribution. That's just my opinion.
Sweetie. Go ahead, sweetie.
Yeah, I also just wanted to make a quick comment that I have a hard time with the criticism of the different avenues, the journey that we've been on, which have led us to where we are now. And had we not taken all those, it's like being in the labyrinth. Some of the pathways take you to a dead end, but you keep persisting. And so I wish Dan was here to talk about that some more, but never mind.
Yeah. I second that motion. It's almost what I kind of hear is, hey, Jamin, you've been wrong in the past, so you're probably wrong now. So I'm going to spend 7 minutes rubbing your face in that, as opposed to saying, you know what, I've actually got a better idea. Here it goes. So anyway, Fred, you got something to say. Go for it, Fred.
You're muted.
Muted, Fred.
I don't think Dan's showing off, and I think that, you know, maybe he's expecting us to extrapolate some other ideas from it, which are potentially useful. I mean, it's a huge, huge undertaking, and maybe, you know, Dan could say it in a more concise way, but I don't think he's trying to show off. And personally, I find what he has to contribute very valuable. And I don't, you know, yeah. So, and maybe I'm included in the group of nattering nabobs of negativism or whatever, but you know, I don't think that, I think it's useful. And I agree, though, that we should focus more on solutions. And I actually felt a moment of, gee, this is possibility when we started talking about the coastal communities, that, yeah, if we could make that work, and if we could explain what we're doing in a way that people could take it in and go and be hopeful as a result of it, that would be positive, and that made me feel good. Because I have to be honest, I mean, these meetings, I'm happy to be here, I want to be here, but I often leave feeling overwhelmed. I mean, the enormity of the situation and the urgency and the time is, yeah, often leaves me feeling really flat. Okay.
Can I jump in real quick there?
Sure.
Just one thing I want to say. I think, you know, what we've started doing with the, you know, the kind of stuff I've been introducing about accelerated collective evolution is maybe we should take some time at the beginning of the meetings for everybody to share, you know, that stuff that's hard for them, and that's their shadow work. Because I don't think there's anything wrong either with what Daniel's doing. I'm just questioning whether it's the time and the place to do it in this particular scenario. I mean, he's a brilliant guy. I agree with everything he says. He's done his homework, and he's very well informed, and he speaks very well, and he uses his ideas incredibly well. I'm just questioning whether it's the right time and place to do it, and it gives it the most, you know. So and so what I'm saying is maybe we should take a step back, Jamin, I don't know, and just everybody give their beef to begin with, and get the stuff off your chest to start the meeting, and then we can go into envisioning solutions like we've already started doing. I don't know if that's going to work in this scenario, but I think it would be a good way to go. You know, and just because it gives you a really good focus, and, you know, like we've done, and I'll just say what I'm working on and what's hard for me, and I share it in an honest, sincere way. And then that becomes the structure out of which I can envision where I'd like to go rather than there, you know. Anyway, that's all I'd say.
What's up? Go ahead, please.
Go ahead, sweetheart.
Yeah, Dharmendra, that's a really great suggestion. Also, my worry is, you know, it seems, I know we're not doing that, but it kind of seems like censorship otherwise. And I think Dan does raise a lot of valuable, you know, he has good comments, and he raises valuable points. So I don't want him to feel picked on either. And we've had this issue before, and then lost him for a while. So I don't want us to lose our group, but it's how to structure ourselves, or what could we practice to get the train back on the rails when we derail, you know, rather than trying to censor somebody. That's the right word.
Yeah, and I'm very careful not to put it in personal terms, right? But to identify bad practices, like just going on for 7 or 8 minutes on, and at the end I'm left with, and what's the point, right? So what's the solution you're proposing, right? And it just really slows us the hell down. So anyway, we definitely need to work on it, and I think a lot of good points have been raised today about it.
Yeah, because
So anyway,
because if you don't get a chance to get it off your chest, the kind of things that you're looking at and how it's giving you issues, then you can't really move on to the next. You got to keep coming back to it till you're done with it, till you're clear with it, you know, before you feel comfortable to say, okay, I'm clear about that. Now I can make a step in a different direction.
Well, and this is Ian. I do think that doing a check-in at the beginning of the meeting, and it might not be, I mean, someone may be really up because they had some really great experience earlier in the day or earlier in the week. Doing a check-in about where it is that you are before we start this might be helpful, and we would need to agree that the check-in is, 3 minutes per person, and that we stick to that, or some number, but something that we can say, hey, this is the, or we do this is the best thing that happened since we met last week, and this is the worst thing that happened around this issue. But some sort of a check-in at the beginning, I think might be helpful. And then people like me have to be here on time, which I was not. So I will work on that for next week for sure.
Well, I don't think you missed anything, Ann.
I just want to jump on what Ann had said and say, I think it'd be really valuable kind of just to know where everyone's apprehensions and fears are. Just so we know when we're kind of like we kind of know what territory we're dealing with. Because you don't want to exacerbate anybody's fear, and then ideally we don't leave these conversations feeling overwhelmed. We feel like we've moved. And like we have made progress. And I think part of that is knowing what's stopping us from moving before we enter into the conversation.
And maybe it's as simple as setting an intention for the meeting. If we need to just define what the intention is at the beginning of the meeting.
Right, exactly.
Love it. I've been, I send out agenda items before the meeting, and but that's a start. I would really love if people would come with their intentions and proposed agenda items, and maybe we spend a few minutes, let everyone have their say concisely, and then let's build consensus. What is the intention for the meeting? I think that'd be a great practice.
And to me, that's the beginning of starting to develop what is real collective intelligence, because then we're all on the same page, on the same track, and given each of our unique angles without conflicting each other, but coming together from different points of view instead and complementing.
I really liked this meeting today. I thought it was really useful, especially the stuff at the end. Demendra, I appreciate what you have to say. And Jamin, everybody, it was good. There is some positive violence in the meeting.
I appreciate what you have to say too, by the way. I think you say a lot of neat things, and you stay really concise and to the point, and I feel like you're always adding something, whatever you say.
Thank you. And sometimes I have a difficult time articulating how I'm feeling, because, like I said, this world is pretty crazy, and getting a grip on it and figuring out how to respond to it and live in it as a moral and ethical, compassionate human being is really hard. It's really hard. Anyway, thank you, everyone. I got to run too. I look forward to seeing you next week, and my sister-in-law and brother-in-law I'll see this weekend, I hope. Okay.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you, guys.
Good to see you.
See you.
Okay.
Okay, great, really great stuff, everybody. I propose we just brainstorm a bit on coastal communities and SRM and collective intelligence. Just now that I think we're ready to do that after a couple of hours of a rough start, shall we say? That's my proposal. Going on mute.
That's what I was gonna.
No, Melissa.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna second that.
Melissa was gonna second that. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Susan.
So, Jamin, are there some things in writing that we could see about creating of coastal communities Or are these ideas in your head at this point? I don't know. I just don't know that.
Yeah, at this point, it's mostly in my head. And so tomorrow, Wednesday, Melissa and I are going to sit down in San Francisco and write and get a lot of this stuff in writing. And then we'll send it all out to everybody. And that'll give us a starting point. Probably put together a Google Doc. And that's where we're at now. But for me, preceding writing is always conversation, right? And that's where we're at now. So I say we just kind of go with it, flow with it. Let the good ideas reign, and then we'll type it up. We'll do a first draft tomorrow that everyone can contribute to.
Okay, cool. So I have more ideas about how to bring this to coastal communities than about the content at this exact moment. So I don't know if everyone here is familiar with the social technologies of the World Cafe, or doing some short trainings in the yes but versus yes and methodology. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that, and I would be happy to write some of them up about what they're about and how they might be useful to share. But that's like second stage. I mean, it's like we're really at first stage, and I'm not as clear about what to offer about what this is about. So I guess for me, Jamin, if you could talk a little bit more about it, that would be helpful to me.
Yeah.
Delighted to. Okay, so first of all, are you clear, and is everyone clear about SRM as a solution and what that would look like, from an engineering standpoint? Mirrors floating on the ocean and all that, because that's really the heart of it.
Yeah, I feel comfortable with that, and comfortable that this is a transition solution, not an end solution. It buys us time.
Exactly, in the same way that the fire department spraying water on a burning house is a transition solution, not a way of life, right? We don't put these giant sprinklers to continuously be dousing the house. But while the house is on fire, that's like number one and pretty much the only thing we should be thinking about. I'm exaggerating, of course, but until the fire is out, all focus should be on putting out the fire. And so it's definitely a transitionary solution, definitely not a way of life.
You have to rebuild the house once it burns down. That's what we got to do with Planet Earth.
So after we've put out the fire and we've bought ourselves precious time, precious decades, then we focus on rebuilding, getting everyone to go vegan, transforming our lifestyles. Darmender going on mute so that we don't. Okay. Sorry, that was Ann. Okay. Anyway, Darmender, I still think you need to go on mute. Okay, thanks. And so with SRM as the core, immediate, ultra urgent solution, the coastal communities idea came up as an answer to the question. Okay, brilliant, SRM. How do we do it? How do we get this dysfunctional family called humanity to organize and do that? And so the Federation of Coastal Communities is a way to do that. And part of the core of that way is that given that national politics and governments are so broken, so corrupt, we need essentially a new form of politics, a new form of governance. And the Federation of Coastal Communities can in a new way around things that we have in common. Now, in this case, it's things that the coastal communities have in common, which is that they all of them are bordering the contiguous oceans and seas of the world. So that's a tremendous commonality. It's like, hey, let's unite around this and unite around the fact that sea level rise and storm surges are happening to all of us in pretty much the same way, right? So once united in this way, see, right now, each coastal community is essentially putting up sandbags that they know are not going to work, or if they are working for a very short period of time, we can't sandbag our way out of this, to quote Melissa Koch. And so rather than each one trying to do their own futile attempts at mitigating climate change, let's all get together and do SRM. Melissa has something to say. Go ahead, sweetheart.
Yeah, were you finished with your phone?
No, I wasn't.
Please finish.
Okay, so the basic idea is we start with some model communities. We start with some pioneering communities who are just ready to go now, like Pacifica, which contracted me and Melissa. Melissa's the pilot, I'm the co-pilot, but contracted us both to do artful activist projects to get the community engaged, get their attention, get them talking. And so we then said, well, great, now that we're going to do that, we might as well focus right in on the solution of SRM and Federation of Coastal Communities. So starting with Pacifica, starting with our own coastal community of Whidbey Island, Washington, and then another coastal community where we have a lot of relatives in San Diego, where my cousin is captain of the Lifeguard and Rescue Division, San Diego County. Start with a few of these communities and do some press conferences to get to alert the rest of the world that the coastal communities are coming together to address this in a collective way. And that collective way is through collective intelligence and collective organization, where we bring together members of these coastal communities to talk about the engineering solutions, the political solutions, the financial solutions. For example, the proposal that we have essentially a 1% voluntary tax on property value for all landowners on the coast, coastal landowners to contribute, so that we have a massive multi-$10 billion or multi-$100 billion fund with which to do SRM. But the very fact that the coastal communities would be getting together and organizing in this way at all and doing it in an international way is a very indirect but nonetheless very real challenge and critique of the authority and the effectiveness of national governments. And it very gently rubs it in their face that the national governments are asleep at the wheel and not doing this. So the local communities are organizing to do this. And with a full-blown planetary Federation of Coastal Communities laser focused on this, we create a whole new form of governance, not government, but governance, to go after this. And I think it has the potential to become the single biggest thing in the world. Some group, in this case a very massive group, coastal communities, rising up to the challenge of climate change, right? It's like you've got the big bad dragon blowing flames at the town. Until somebody stands up to do something about that, that's going to be the single biggest issue on everybody's mind, as climate change is rapidly becoming. In fact, I'd say that we're there, right? And so the fact that someone is standing up with an actual tangible solution that can put out the fire in very short order, right? Unlike any other solution on the table. And I mean any other solution on the table. I challenge anyone to come up with a solution that can put out the fire as quickly and decisively as SRM. And anything that doesn't really needs to take a back seat to SRM in terms of urgency and in terms of planetary discussion. Otherwise, we're literally going to die with promoting good intentions that aren't going to get us there. We got to put out the fire. SRM is the only thing that can do it. That's a hell of a story. And the fact that coastal communities are uniting. Look, we were down in San Diego, just miles away from the U.S.-Mexican border, and talking with a dual citizen, Mexican and American dual citizen and longtime friend of the family, talking about the wall. She crosses the border twice a week, and she showed us pictures. One day, no wall. Another day, a section of the wall. Next day, or a week later, boom, a whole stretch of the wall. They're building the wall. So that's a big issue, which will also, be one of the first things to people's minds when they hear the slogan, Californians stand your ground, right? When you hear Californians stand your ground, it sounds like you're standing your ground against some other group of human beings. But of course, it's really about climate change. Now imagine that we get coastal communities on the northwest coast of Mexico getting together with coastal communities on the west coast of the United States and uniting and transcending, and therefore subtly or not so subtly raising a giant middle finger to the ones building the wall. That's exciting stuff. I'm just pointing out some of the elements that are going to make this a story that the major media can run with, and a story that social media can run with. So yeah, go ahead, Ann, and then Melissa has a comment. Go ahead, Ann.
So Jamin, this is really exciting to listen to you talk about this. And it occurs to me that it is incredibly important to engage and empower people in those places to be a part of this. So not to be passively listening to this information and simply accepting it, but to actively engage in understanding it and leaving the room that they're in when they learn about it to spread that to other people in those communities. And so now I really, really want to participate in designing a World Cafe conversation around this issue that can be used as you're rolling this stuff out. So World Cafe is a social methodology of holding conversations that have deep meaning and that create equality between all of the people in the room. They take a bit of time, and there's an entire methodology set out, and there's information that gets shared in the beginning and then questions that people discuss. But the people who come to these first meetings have to be the first people to take it back to the rest of the community. All the people that didn't read or listen to the media, that didn't come to the meeting, that aren't, that weren't there. So anyway, I would like to volunteer to lay this out, and whether you use it or not, but I think it would be a perfect way to do this. And though I had never thought of it in the past, World Cafe conversations are about creating collective intelligence.
That is awesome.
And that sounds so awesome.
And that's awesome. And I think that's a missing piece that we didn't have. And so I would love sooner than later if we could get together, all of us, and do this.
And Melissa, it also uses art, because while people are having the conversation, you actually see people at tables of 4, and you put paper on the tables with markers, and as people have the conversation, they draw things. It's really cool. But yes, I would love to have a longer conversation and lay this all out.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for offering that. It's the missing piece, and here it is. I don't know if you were finished commenting, Anne, but just one thing I wanted to add to what Jamin was saying earlier is that the difference between now and before is that the universe has created these openings for us. Pacifica was an opening that was offered, and we jumped in and we rode that horse, and it's led us here. There are all these openings happening. Whidbey Island has had openings. Port Townsend has had an opening. And Mexico, my daughter and her boyfriend, who's Mexican, are actually doing a sewing project that's going to be part of the Pacifica project. So we're already building these bridges through art and communication and actually doing things which will be part of this bigger schema of things unfolding. And I really love this. So bringing your methodology into this is really a marvelous thing, because we are really looking for a way to bring people actively into doing and conversing. Thank you.
Beautiful. And also, Anne, I would love to invite you as well to be part of the core team of Collective Intelligence, which is one of the two parallel tracks. I see Ben seconding the motion, and Dharmendra as well. The two parallel tracks being SRM and Collective Intelligence. And in a nutshell, SRM is the vehicle, the physical vehicle for cooling the planet, the only one that can do it in time. And Collective Intelligence is the way that we as humanity, get smart enough and sufficiently connected that we can actually make it happen. And it's really, I think that's the vegan milk and vegan Oreo combination that will that will get us there in a nutshell. So I'd love to invite you to both play a major role in both of those. Yeah, and that's the
I'm in.
and that's the Oh, well, love it. Thank you, Ann. And that's the penalty for being so smart, creative, vocal, and compassionate as you are, is that you get invited to really big things. Going on
mute. Once you've learned, there's no going back. It kind of seems like, I mean, I have this conversation in my head all the time. Just kind of, why wouldn't I be doing this? I don't have a good reason to not be doing this. And yeah.
Well, I'm constantly, I'm almost, I've been almost paralyzed for a bit of time, because where do I put my time and energy? I literally stopped working to devote myself to this full time. And yet, do I do it on the health side of veganism, because I think that might be where more people are going to do it, or the animal rights and the protests and the vigils and all of that, or right? And so then I went to Vegan World 2026, and then there's this opportunity, and then this opportunity, and I'm like, I'm just going to jump in, and the path is going to reveal itself. And so maybe this is the path. I don't know.
Might as well find out, right? That's exactly what happens.
What we're doing.
That's exactly what we're doing, and it's exactly what happened to me at Vegan World 2026. Is I happened to sit at the same table as Jamin, and instantaneously I'm like, "What is this? What are you talking about here? This sounds fascinating. I want to see where this goes."
And I have to step away for a moment because I have two dogs that have got to go out. And I will be back in like 5 minutes.
And just so everybody knows, I've got to go off and do things in about 10 minutes, so I'm just going to disappear. I'll say it now early so it doesn't stop the flow of the conversation. Then I'll jump back into the Vegan Collective group around 3:30ish you guys' time. Okay, so in about 10 minutes, I'm just going to disappear. Otherwise, loving every minute of it.
And Dharmendra, please say what you have to say now. Just jump in if and when you want to, so that we hear from you before you go, because you have such brilliant things to say.
Right. Well, when Ann was here, she stepped away. I was going to totally just extend again the Vegan Synergy meditation. And since you're inviting into everything we do, you got to include her in on your crazy in the moment. Dharmendra, let's expand our consciousness thing. We don't really have a name for that. That's just what we do. I don't care if we have a name for it, but when I have to put it somewhere like the Vegan Collective Intelligence world, then we have to call it Vegan Synergy Meditation or whatever. And that is yet to develop. I'm going to start introducing it through the Vegan Collective, weekly meetings that are taking place, in an hour or two or whenever it is. So just so people can ask questions. But I really don't have anything else to say. I'm really taking a lot in right now because the practical side always fascinates me. I'm down on this, what I do, but I'm always learning when it comes to like listening to Jamin and how he's going to tackle this whole SRM thing and, all of that. That's a gas for me to hear all that stuff. So I'm just going to listen and then disappear and then come back. I'm good. That's it. All I got, Jamin, for now. I've said it. I think I've said quite a bit already today, haven't I?
No, yeah, you've said super awesome stuff.
Darmendra, you always lift things up to this higher plane, so thank you for that. And look how it unblocks, you know? Awesome.
That is truly my intention, and I feel you really get me, Melissa. So, you know, you have my heart.
Right back at you. We need the medicine on the planet.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, too.
Heck yeah.
And much love.
Much love.
Yeah, and hey, Darmendra, starting a meeting with, you know, a 5-minute meditation led by you would be fabulous.
Ooh, I would love to do that. That would actually, I think, get our intent laid down real easy too, because out of the inner silence, you always find what it is you're doing, and that, you know, why am I here? Because you'll just settle into it. Just like when the muddy water, you know, the mud settles, you see into it and you see what's there. I mean, it's just so simple. Yes, beautiful. Thank you. And see, you are a brilliant addition to this circle. Thank you so much for being here.
And you know what is making me smile, Anne, is that, like, what you started talking out about yourself, you know, where you're at. Like, I think you just surpassed that and became really who you are. And you brought the humor back in, and you really brought this inspiration back into the conversation as well. So that's really fun. Like, I feel the conversation got the smile back on it for all of us.
Totally. And the divine feminine that all three of you wonderful ladies are bringing. So please, the feminine voice is so much needed here, particularly when we start to go off track, because we men can be pretty stupid sometimes.
No comment.
Thank you, sweetheart. Yeah, thank you.
Hey, I'm just extremely grateful. I'm just extremely grateful for this group, because you're bringing me back to a hopeful position in this world, and I really needed to get back on a much more positive path than I had been on. So I am extremely grateful and would love to be able to contribute.
Yes, people have lost track of the divine, and that's something that, I don't know, you know, I spent 20 years meditating, and 26 years ago something happened to me, and that's permanently installed. I never lose track of it. And I've been waiting for 2.5 decades to share it, and now I finally have a platform. Thanks first and foremost to Jamin, and then everybody else who's starting to realize we all have that connection and we can all share it. My message is not to tell anybody anything except you can do it too. That's the point.
And I want to acknowledge your gratitude, and I want to thank you for it. And I simply want to quote that great bumper sticker that simply poses a very simple question: who rescued who? And you are rescuing all of us today.
Nice.
Wow. Thank you. And I have to tell you, my dogs are here telling me that it's time for them to have dinner and that I better get my butt in gear and get them dinner. So, just to keep me, you know, in the real world. But thank you very much for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you have time tomorrow, Anne, to like do a brainstorm?
I do. Let me grab my calendar though. Hang on 1 second.
Yeah, in fact, we could just block off some time and invite everybody on this call and a bit beyond to do a focused session on the Federation of Coastal Communities.
Well, I was thinking also for cafe.
Oh yeah, and the collective intelligence. So and you know, and how do we do, you know, kind of a custom swirl of the two, collective intelligence and the Federation of Coastal Communities, because they are inseparable. The Federation will be a collective intelligence and will depend upon the broader collective intelligence, which, by the way, the world will be welcome to participate in, you know, even if you're in the middle of Iowa, get a surfboard and get online with us, and be part of the the collective intelligence supporting the Federation of Coastal Communities.
So, Melissa, I am available tomorrow. I'm on the East Coast,
Okay.
Southern Florida. So our time, we've got a 3-hour time difference, but I can
Okay.
organize just about any time tomorrow.
Okay. Well, what about Jamie? What do you think? In the morning, late morning?
Yeah, maybe late morning. Maybe
11 our time?
yeah, maybe around 11 Pacific, which would be 2 p.m. Eastern.
That's perfect. That's
And,
perfect.
and how cool that you're in Florida, which is the arguably the coastal community that's getting hammered the hardest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we could get a lot of Floridians rallied to the cause. These are not people in denial. It's hard to be in denial when you're underwater. So
I would like to just make a proposal, and you're all welcome to join the conversation. But since we're meeting Cindy on Thursday, Cindy Abbott, she's the organizer of Sanchez, the director of Sanchez Art Center, who organized this Pacifica project we're participating in, is like to kind of brainstorm the proposal and how to make it more effective in the community engagement aspect of the project, really right along the lines of what you're talking about, Anne, and also getting people motivated and active and into the conversation around SRM, collective intelligence, etc., saving species. I mean, we could go on. So I would propose that we start with that in the morning.
yeah,
And then if we want to branch off and become more focused specifically on other things, that we do that afterwards. I don't know what you guys all think.
I love the idea. Yeah. Start with the Federation, start with its mission,
Start with Pacifica.
and Pacifica specifically.
Yeah.
Pacifica. And because that's where we've got the big in right now. We've been invited in at the level of the city, and
we're meeting her on Thursday afternoon, so it would be really awesome. This is like really good timing because we're making our final pitch. We're just summarizing what our final project is going to be. We've already been selected, but we have to give her a timeline and specifically what we're doing.
Yeah.
Then. So that'd be good.
Exactly. And also, after we meet her on Thursday afternoon is when we have the Sierra Club dinner at the Berkeley Yacht Club, where she is the keynote speaker. And she's going to be talking all about Pacifica's plight and the solution of art. And of course, we're going to be right there. And then after her 1-hour presentation, we're going to have a big, round table community, big circle discussion. And I'll be streaming that one way or another, whether it's a Zoom video conference or a YouTube thing, and I'll let everybody know. I'll send everybody the information via email. But that's the idea. So everyone who wants to join us tomorrow, her presentation will be starting at 8 p.m. Pacific. It'll go from 8 to 9, and then the big circle discussion will start at probably around 9:20, 9:25 Pacific time. It may be a bit challenging to actually have like full participation in that, because I'm set her as best we can. But basically, you'll be able to see her presentation streaming live one way or another. The big circle discussion, we'll do the best we can. So just I don't want to oversell that in terms of how easy it'll be for you to hear, right? But there probably won't be a huge number of us, so we may be able to point the laptop at us all, and who knows? It might be easy for you to at least listen in. It'll probably be much more challenging for you to speak up into that, but we'll see. We'll see.
Maybe we can do type comments.
Or type comments are another. Yeah, type comments are another possibility. So maybe we'll just kind of do it as a Zoom, and that's I like that idea.
See you guys in a little bit. Got to go. Catch you in the vegan flip side.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful.
Love you.
Love you. Love you. All right, talk soon. Bye for now.
Yeah.
Jamin, what have your communications with Guy McPherson and Ye Tao, what have those been like recently?
Okay, you broke up a little bit. Can you repeat again, please?
I was just wondering where your conversation with Ye Tao and Guy McPherson is at, because I see their engagement with this needing to be like helped along by us. I think that if we had them like collaborating regularly on video, that would be huge, and publishing some stuff together and getting in the habit of that. I think that would be huge. And if we compile like basically refinements of each of their work in one place and have them work on that, I think that's another really big step we could take in the immediate future. So I was just kind of asking to see, I don't know, I just want to get them more engaged, and you're the one that is going to do that. So I'm kind of wondering where that's at.
Jamin, before you jump in, I want to say that I started the PDF of the letter of support for Ye Tao. And I know you might have some edits. I'm making some edits that I'll pass along your way, and then we can regroup on that. But just wanted to give that quick update.
Okay, great. I'll address that first, and then I'll address Nolan's question. Regarding edits for that, I would please feel free to incorporate wholesale what I sent out last Wednesday to everyone on the Pacifica email, because that was kind of the refinement of the previous email to Ye Tao. So feel free to thank you, Susanna. Thanks so much for working on that. And then in response to Nolan, so the latest with Ye Tao is that he is talking with other people at Harvard about getting a 2-year sabbatical to really promote this, right? To really push on this and basically get a break from his other responsibilities at Harvard. One of the things he also wants to do is do a summer program this coming summer at Harvard on climate change and SRM, and then actually teach a course in the fall at Harvard on climate change. And so he's basically getting permission for all of the above. And that's what Suzanne has generously volunteered to help out with, is a letter of support for Ye Tao that he can distribute at Harvard, authored and signed by me. And I think he really liked the first iteration of that, in which we included a video. All of that went out last Wednesday to all of you in email form, that where the subject was Sierra Club dinner on Pacifica and good news on climate change. If y'all want to take a look at that, really good stuff there, including links on SRM, which in turn include a video of the first meeting we had with Ye Tao, which really sets the stage for all this. So now, Ye has also made it clear that he's like very busy getting all of the above done, as well as publishing a paper on SRM. So he really, he's been pretty clear that he doesn't have a lot of time beyond that, which is a big issue for me and all of us, because we need Ye on, regular video conferences with us to dig into all this, even if it's an hour every 2 weeks. I think we can. I'm going to lean on him for that. And in fact, I'd like to actually send him a letter signed by all of us saying, "Hey, Ye, we need you." And in fact, let's record a video tomorrow, or even now, take a snippet of this and say, "Hey, Ye, we need you. We really need you. The world needs you. And this is how we need you. We need you participating in the collective intelligence and being, 1 hour every 2 weeks. Come on, you can do it. Join us, right? So anyway, that's, or if not that, half an hour every 2 weeks, but something where you say, look, here's the update, here's the latest, we're making this happen. Just let him speak. Maybe we just ask him some questions and let him speak. But we need him. We need that. We need to get a series going, and then after he drops off, if he's busy, which he is, the rest of us can build off of that, right? And there's the collective intelligence right there. With Guy McPherson, Guy in the last few weeks has made a move to Orlando, Florida, the land of Anne. And well, I mean, I think, Anne, you're further south from there, but he's made a move to Orlando, Florida with his partner, Pauline. I think he's published all of this like very publicly on his website, so I'm not disclosing personal information, but it's for family reasons. His partner's father has pretty serious dementia, and he's written that this is probably going to be his last move. Like the boy who cried wolf, he said a couple of years ago, he said, "This is my last move is to New York," and he was moving to New York, and he's been there for a couple of years. So this is really his last move, is what he's saying now. But anyway, so he's been kind of doing that whole transition thing. I'd like to invite him to join us tomorrow, and if he's available, of course, and really get him involved, because I see, Guy McPherson and Ye Tao are kind of our two celebrities, and I kind of see myself as sort of like the program anchor for the news channel that we're creating here, the Collective Intelligence channel, and then all of us being the collective intelligence. But we need both those folks, Guy and Ye. I'm going to go on mute. But I really love this dialogue. We're really hashing out some important stuff here. So go team.
Jamin, I like the idea of, maybe Ye Tao can't make the whole hour or 2 hours or whatever we can schedule, but we plan for him to get 10 minutes, 15, whatever he needs to give us an update. And maybe he can't commit to a whole series right away, but I bet we could convince him to give us, 20 minutes once. And then we at least get to, take it from there and keep going.
Good idea.
Love it. Great idea. I'll see. We'll put together an ask, but I think that's, let's start with 20 minutes. And obviously, if he can't, at least we have that on the calendar. And if he can't make it, well, the rest of us join, and maybe he sends us a note that we read at the beginning. But he is our our heavyweight academic, associated with one of the top 2 or 3 most prestigious academic institutions on the planet, that get people to pay attention just based on that prestige factor. And he came up with the ocean-based SRM concept and has really taken it pretty far. Heck yeah.
Is there? I'd be curious if he is as busy as he says he is, and he's unable to give us that time. If there's somebody he's working alongside, like a colleague that he can bring up to speed,
Or
and
a
maybe
grad student
or a
something.
grad student, or someone who's willing to, who's closer to him, who's willing to take on the task of being a communicator between our group. I don't know.
Love it, Benjamin. Great idea. In fact, one of his colleagues is Chris Stokes at Harvard, who very nice guy. He's been on all the meetings with Yatal. Also, we can throw that out there. Really love that idea because he's right there in the same building as Ye. They're colleagues in the same group, and so that's a great idea. Thank you.
I just did 580.
I'll also take it. I'll volunteer to start putting together some bit.ai documents this week, and kind of jerry-rigging a little social network that we can show people. It's just going to basically be a list of the people that are involved in the collective intelligence that's forming. And I'm thinking, basically we can have a list of these folks that are heavily involved, and then we can form another list of some people that we kind of have our eyes on that we're not regularly talking to. And then that way new people can just see what we're up to, and we don't have to be saying everything over and over again. I think we're even getting tired of kind of repeating ourselves and feeling like not everybody's on the same page. So I'll volunteer to get started on some of those documents and then share those around, and we can all collaborate on them, and everybody can kind of fill in their own little bios and provide whatever links to like your own work. So yeah, I'll get started on that. And another thing, Ben, Gaio, and I the other day kind of started a collective intelligence resources document that was it's just a Google Doc, but that's another document I want to make is somewhere we can dump all of the collective intelligence resources. Another document somewhere we can dump all of the SRM resources, and then let's just make it I guess a rule or an assumption that we have coming into these meetings is that the people in these conversations have looked through these documents pretty thoroughly and kind of got caught up on the resources that are available. That way we don't get hung up on like, I don't know, we're kind of all jumbled. Like some of us are really on the same page because we've spent a ton of time talking to each other. But for the combinations of people that haven't had that time, we really need a set of resources. Otherwise our like collective mind is going to be very confused and frustrated, which I think is part of what's come out in the meeting earlier today, especially. Like I want to get Dan to see what we're seeing and get him to I think he has a ways to go in being in fully realizing where we're at. Because I'm far more hopeful than it seems like he is, and I just want him to get there really bad. So I've started ranting now. I'm gonna go on mute.
Hey, this is Ian. I'd like to just say really quickly that I don't think what happened earlier today was bad. I think it was good. All relationships go through these things, right? I mean, whether it's siblings or spouses, significant others, classrooms, friends, groups. I mean, we got to figure it out. So it's going to happen occasionally. We're not all on the same page. We got to figure it out. That's all.
Yeah, and we also want to exude inclusivity, because like that's exactly what's going to make this succeed. And it really is just a matter of all getting on the same page, and setting aside basically, I'm not sure, we've experienced this in almost every conversation we've had, where at some point you just have to let go of whatever preconceived idea or default response you have to whatever you're hearing, and start. I think we were listening to Daniel Schmackenberg talk about the idea of rule omega, and the idea is that in a conversation, when someone brings up something that you don't understand or think is wild or think is wrong, and rather than defaulting to yes but or no, you respond with inquiry and inquisitiveness and curiosity, and you take the default of, maybe there's something here that I don't understand yet.
Yeah, we just aren't on the same page.
We just aren't on the same page yet.
What page are you on?
What page are you on? And in asking those questions, you end up more often than not, it's just something that you don't understand. It's not that somebody is wrong, because there's everybody's right in their own way. Everyone has a different perspective, so it's a matter of seeing, getting somebody to see through your perspective, other perspectives.
Anne wrote appreciative inquiry. Yeah, that sounds cool. That's a good name for it.
Well, that's an actual thing. Like, I didn't make that up. Appreciative inquiry is an actual methodology that we can get.
Yeah, and one of the ones I've learned in the TAT lab, so it's Teaching Artist Training Lab in Seattle, is they call it wondering, and I love that. It's, when you say, well, I'm wondering about, because that keeps it open, right? It's not that you're not judging anyone, you just don't know, and then you wonder, and then it opens up the conversation, doesn't shut it down.
Yeah, the idea of keeping the conversation open and going, and yeah, we can definitely feel when it stalls out or slows down, and I think there are something else that Daniel Schmackenberg was speaking about, was establishing, and Nolan and Evan came over the other day and we were kind of talking about this, is establishing some tools for us to use during these conversations to recognize when stuff like that is happening, and be able to identify, just being able to identify these points, and being able to, becoming aware with, I guess the conversation becomes aware of itself through that. And using these tools, we can just, it will speed up the process. I think it'll speed up the process and allow us to communicate on an entirely different level, because we'll have established these ground rules, these terms that we can all start from, if that makes sense.
Great stuff, everybody. Yeah, this is the collective intelligence evolving, right? With all this great stuff that we're talking about in the last few minutes. Wait. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's working from the principle of compassion, you know, which I really love. So it's like, how do we stay in conversation through gratitude and compassion? Appreciation.
Does anyone need? We are gonna need to take a break before the next meeting, but
Me too.
how's everyone else feeling?
And too.
Yeah, totally. All right, and just so everybody knows, for the next meeting, I'll start out on iPad, and then at about 3:30, I'll shift over to being situated in the Airbnb, where I'll be able to be much more, well, a bit more functional. This is pretty functional, I think. We're entering the Bay Area now, so bandwidth is going to be really good. So awesome.
It's a lot better than before, for sure.
Oh my God! Well, I'm just grateful that we were continuously connected all the way up I-5 through all the.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Through all the hills and valleys.
Yeah.
Not sure how good that is for the environment, but it's kept us connected.
Well, it's kind of like SRM itself. There are negative unintended consequences, but you know, the same thing with dousing a house with water that's burning. There will be unintended consequences, some of which will be negative, but we got to do what we got to do. So we're using the tools we got and putting out the fire, buying us some time. Alrighty, so let's take a break, and Benjamin and Suzanne, y'all will kick off at 3, and or a few minutes before, ideally, a couple of minutes before, and then we'll be on.
Love you guys.
Love
See
you
you.
guys.
Bye.
See you soon.
All right, see you guys soon. Take care.